Hi everyone, my name is Grant Kastner. I am Extempore's Community Manager, and welcome to this very first blog breakdown. What we're going to be doing today in the next few minutes is going through a little bit of the recent blog that I wrote on something called 1 Minute News. And then I was just going to be giving some advice, some pointers, talking a little bit more in depth, and just explaining things so that you guys can better understand how you can use it in your classroom. So let's see what we're going to be doing today. 1 Minute News. We're going to talk about what is 1 Minute News first and foremost. How do we go about introducing it to our students? And I'll give you guys a template on this presentational task. It's a little Google Doc, has the directions, it has some examples, it has the rubric that I also include, and you can copy that and use that however you want. We'll see that. We'll talk about when students should present these in your classroom in terms of the unit, as well as when during the actual lesson. Second to last thing will be some helping cards talking about level up words and some rejoinders and how these can further supplement the 1 Minute News activity. And then finally, I'll give you some advice on how to host 1 Minute News on Extempore. Okay, so what is 1 Minute News? You can see I have a little description here, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit more. Very simple. What 1 Minute News is you have a speaker come up to the front of the room from your class, and they talk about, it's a presentational speaking task. They talk about maybe their family or their hobbies or what classes they're taking or food that they are learning about. And the idea is that you have a task behind it. So you can see here, a little picture that I have for my classroom. The speaker will come to the front of the room, but the idea is that there is a task that they need to complete. And what happens is that you have content. So for example, here's an example that I gave here. The example that I gave in my classroom is that you might have a food competition and that you have to go around and talk to your peers and learn about who's making what their food is like. But eventually your presentational task, the 1 Minute News, is presenting that to the classroom. So telling us whose stall you went to, whose food you tried, what was their food like, did you like it, why or why not, was it cheap, expensive, all that stuff. And then the task at the end of it is telling us who do you think is going to win this competition, right? So that's the task. If it's classes, you might say, what class would you recommend somebody take at your class and why, right? That's the task. And so afterwards, once the speaker finishes and the audience applaud, great job, all that, then we'll scroll down, we can see, do something called using the Poll Everywhere app, where the audience can then participate and ask the speaker questions about what they did. And that's pretty much it, right? So you have a presentational task, the student comes to the front of the room, they deliver a little presentation, and then the audience, once you're done, opens up the Poll Everywhere app, and there's a little code that you'll see. It'll probably be your name and some numbers, and then they can submit a question for the speaker to answer after the presentation. Our next step is, how do we introduce this to our students? One of the things that you'll see in the blog is how I mentioned modeling. It is crucial that we model the 1 Minute News presentation for our students, right? So before you even have any of your students do this, you go up to the front of the room and just unprompted, you start speaking. You say, listen to what I'm going to say. And you present on something. So for a level 1 class, it might just be a very basic self-introduction. Hi, my name is Grant. I'm 15 years old. Wink. I have mom and dad, brother, sister, dog, whatever, all that stuff you want to say. And then afterwards, you tell the students, okay, I'm all done. Now, ask me questions about what you just heard, right? And you're assuming, of course, that you've gone over this stuff, right? Your students have learned this, they've mastered it, and now they can start talking about it and doing the basics of asking and answering questions in the target language on that topic. So modeling is crucial. And another thing that I mentioned is that when you model, it's important to be a good presenter, right? As we are being teachers, in that we're not saying, oh, hi, my name is Grant, I'm 15, I have a dog. No, we want to be emotional when we talk to our students to show them that, hey, this isn't just trying to speak the target language, obviously it is, but that we want to be good presenters as well, right? We can show our emotions, we can express ourselves better when we do that in the target language. So that really is the importance of modeling and showing our students, hey, you're not going to copy everything that I do, but this is pretty much what your presentation should look like, right? Again, so modeling is really important when we introduce it to our students. Once we have introduced and modeled to our students what 1 Minute News is, then we can proceed to show them, okay, what is this all about? What just happened? What did I just do? Here you can see I have a little templates for 1 Minute News. It has a little description. It says what class it is. It says 1 Minute News, Chinese 1, and it's a self-introduction. That's the task. So you can see the description, telling the student, hey, here's what you have to do. Here are the questions that you have to answer. Who are you? What's your surname? What grade are you in? How old are you? How many people are in your family? Who are they? Do you have any brothers or sisters? how old are they, and what are their names, right? So very, very basic, fundamental level 1 questions that students should be able to answer. But these are the tasks, right? If students are learning and progressing, these are the things that they should be able to do in the target language, right? It's a can do, introduce yourself, introduce someone else. That is the target task. That is the can do at hand here. You'll notice as well, I put just a little blurb to reiterate the purpose of these speaking assignments is it's not to be memorized, right? But again, encouraging them to practice, but speaking naturally. That is the goal behind this. That is what we want students to do with 1 Minute News. And then obviously with listener's job as well. Be attentive, listen, and then pose appropriate questions. As I scroll down, you can see the rubric that I have. Pretty straightforward. Speaking fluency, content, and then audience participation, right? Do they check all the boxes? Do they say, okay, I'm going to talk about this, this, and that. I say what grade I'm in. I say my name. I say how many people are in my family. I say how old they are. And then speaking fluency, right? Encouraging them to deliver a proper presentation and not something that is over-rehearsed, but something that comes off as very genuine and practiced and just well done, right, overall. Also, just on the opposite of that would be avoiding ums and constant pauses, right? And it's about fluency. We want them to speak fluently, or as best as they can, really, as best as they can. So, all right, to continue then, here I have just a little date and name. And so when you're presenting this to your students, you say, okay, well, who goes who goes when? This is where I have, okay, I have the date on one side, and then I have their name on another side, and then we just decide right here and then. I put it in this document, and then I post this document on our LMS for students to be able to access. And then I also post the names of the presenters on the LMS as well, so that students know, oh, this is when I have to present. I need to prepare my presentation for this day. So this is a template you can use. You can check the description right below. You get a link, make a copy of this, and use it however you want. Like I said, dates and names, rubric for it, and then a little description of 1 Minute News as well and what the student has to do. So here you go. Moving on, we want to talk about when to present 1 Minute News. And there are 2 whens in this question. First when is when in the course of the unit. Do you want your students to present 1 Minute News? And then the second one is when in the course of the lesson. Do you want your students to present 1 Minute News? So the first one, when in the course of the unit, you want to make sure that your students have sort of mastered all of the content that you want them to talk about, right? So it's for me, 1 Minute News really is a presentational speaking summative assessment, right? Where we have covered a bunch of things, we have talked about it, we have gained acquisition, we have acquired most of it, it's retaining with them, and it's now a language that we can take and talk about in a presentational speaking test. So you want to make sure over the course of your unit, whether it's chapter-based or content-based or whatever you're doing, that they can talk about what you want them to talk about. It sounds obvious, but that is a prerequisite for doing 1 Minute News in your classroom. And then so the second when is when in the course of the lesson do you want your students to present 1 Minute News. And what I would say for that is what I like to do is that I like to first have a warm-up in the start of my class, something that takes maybe 5, 10, even 15 minutes where students can come in, get settled down, have something to do the second they walk into the classroom. And then we transition, we go over the warm-up, then we transition, we say, okay, now who is going to present on 1 Minute News? And the person usually knows, and then everyone looks and say, oh, it's so-and-so's time to present. And that's usually when it happens. So it's the second sort of section of my class. Again, so my students can come in, get comfortable, transition from one class to the next, and then know when it's going to occur during the class, because I think that just provides them with some comfort. And just knowing the routine makes them feel a little bit more comfortable and confident when it comes to doing 1 Minute News. So that is when to present, when they've mastered it, and when to present in class. Usually for me, it's the second part of the class. The penultimate piece of this blog breakdown is this little document on 1 Minute News helping words and phrases. And this is already copied into the blog. I'll also put the link below in the description for you to find. And you can make a copy of this and manipulate it however you want. Here is what this is. It's little strips that I make where you have rejoinders, ways that students can respond to the presenter's answers to their question. So things like, thanks for the reply. Hey, that's right. Totally. Really. Oh, I see. Me too. I agree. You have a point. Things like that, right? Appropriate rejoinders for students to use when they're responding to the presenter's question. And finally, as we scroll down, some level up words that you can add into your classrooms. Like, oh, I heard such and such. If such and such. It seems like, maybe, probably, actually, right? Words like this, right? And the reason why you will see I have so many of them is because they are little strips that I cut out. And so each time before 1 Minute News, I have these, they're laminated. And so the student will see both the rejoinders and the level up words on one side, rejoinders on another side, and they have these right in front of them. And so I pass these out before each 1 minute news. The students have them, they listen, and then when they pose a question, they can use some level up words. When the student responds, they can respond with a rejoinder. So I think these are really useful. And what's great about them is that the more you use these, the more students get comfortable with them, and they go, oh, if they wanted the word for if, or they say, oh, what's if? Oh, rugua. And then the next day they say, oh, what's if? Rugua. And then by the third day, oh, I know if, it's rugua. And that repetition, that meaningful repetition and high frequency, these are just more ways that we can augment students' vocabulary and just help with their proficiency and give them real world practical language that they can use both in 1 minute news and in their daily lives. The last piece of this blog breakdown is presenting on Extempore. How can we do a 1 minute news assignment on the Extempore platform? You'll see when you create an assessment, you can give the assessment name. I have 1 minute news marked. Assessment timeline, choose when you want that assignment to be due. The assessment type, individual response. My students will respond with video. This is presentational speaking, and I want them to present. And then the assessment description, what they have to do, present on your family. You can include the link to the 1 minute news template that I showed earlier. You can put that in your LMS so that they know beforehand. This is just a matter of hosting the assessment that they are doing. If I scroll down, we can see here I've limited their time to respond. I've only given them 1 minute to do it. And so that really sort of solidifies the name of 1 minute news. And so now I can complete this. I can click next. I'll do the assessment. I'll see you soon, and then we can grade it. Before I can complete the assessment, I have to add questions. And here's where you have a little bit of an option when you post this on Extempore for your students to do. Within the question title, I have 1 minute news, but then the question text. Okay, so now you have to think, do I want to put the questions that I had in my template earlier, right? These questions right here, or do I want to just leave it blank and say, hey, give your 1 minute news presentation. And what I would do is say, give your 1 minute news presentation here, right? So there's two options. Right? Do you want your students to be able to see the questions while they are doing it or not? And that's maybe an accommodation that you can provide for those who you feel may need it, or those who say, no, this is your presentation. You know exactly what you have to do. Just give your presentation right here. So now let's go do it. So then we can see here on the teacher page, I have all of my students listed, and I can see their video responses to the 1 minute news prompt that I publish on Extempore. And what's great about this is that all of the videos are hosted right here. You can see on this left-hand side, they would all be right there, and you can click on them, listen to them. I can give text feedback to my students. I can say, great pronunciation and improving fluency or something like that. I can provide audio feedback. I can provide video feedback, and that will all show up on the student portal for them to see. So as soon as I've submitted feedback, it's there. They can listen to their response again. They can see the prompt again. They can do whatever they need to do. And again, all of the videos are hosted directly on Extempore. You can have them all in one place. And it's just a great way to also accommodate for your students who might not want to present at the front of the room during class. So this is how you would do it on Extempore, right? That is it for our first blog breakdown on 1 minute news. I hope you enjoyed this little video. I hope you enjoyed the blog. If you read it, do let me know your thoughts. I'd be curious to hear any questions you may have. Put them in the comments below. And just, let me know what you think. How could you use this in your class? What other ideas do you have on building proficiency and using high frequency vocabulary and phrases, getting your students to get meaningful repetition each day when they come to class? And just, overall thoughts, feedback, let me know. How would you use this? What would you do? Any other thoughts you might have? And we will see you next time.